Chapter 1. Confucianism. Almost all empires were created by force, but none can be sustained by it. Universal rule, to last, needs to translate force into obligation. Otherwise, the energies of the rulers will be exhausted in maintaining their dominance at the expense of their ability to shape the future, which is the ultimate task of statesmanship. Empires persist if repression gives way to consensus. So it was with China. The methods by which it was unified, and periodically overturned and reunified again, were occasionally brutal. Chinese history witnessed its share of sanguinary rebellions and dynastic tyrants. Yet China owed its millennial survival far less to the punishments meted out by its emperors than to the community of values fostered among its population and its government of scholar officials. Not the least exceptional aspect of Chinese culture is that these values were essentially secular in nature. At the time when Buddhism appeared in Indian culture stressing contemplation and inner peace, and monotheism was proclaimed by the Jewish, and, later, Christian and Islamic, prophets with an evocation of a life after death, China produced no religious themes in the Western sense at all. The Chinese never generated a myth of cosmic creation. Their universe was created by the Chinese themselves, whose values, even when declared of universal applicability, were conceived of as Chinese in origin. The predominant values of Chinese society were derived from the prescriptions of an ancient philosopher known to posterity as Confucius, or Confucius in the Latinized version. Confucius, 551–479 BC, lived at the end of the so-called Spring and Autumn period, 770–476 BC, a time of political upheaval that led to the brutal struggles of the Warring States period, 475–221 BC. The ruling house of Zhou was in decline, unable to exert its authority over rebellious princes competing for political power. Greed and violence went unchecked. All under heaven was again in disarray. Like Machiavelli, Confucius was an itinerant in his country, hoping to be retained as an advisor to one of the princes then contending for survival. But unlike Machiavelli, Confucius was concerned more with the cultivation of social harmony than with the machinations of power. His themes were the principles of compassionate rule, the performance of correct rituals, and the inculcation of filial piety. Perhaps because he offered his prospective employers no short-term route to wealth or power, Confucius died without achieving his goal. He never found a prince to implement his maxims, and China continued its slide toward political collapse and war. But Confucius's teachings, recorded by his disciples, survived. When the bloodletting ended and China again stood unified, the Han dynasty, 206 BC to AD 220, adopted Confucian thought as an official state philosophy. Compiled into a central collection of Confucius's sayings, the Analects, and subsequent books of learned commentary, the Confucian canon would evolve into something akin to China's Bible, and its constitution combined. Expertise in these texts became the central qualification for service in China's imperial bureaucracy, a priesthood of literary scholar officials selected by nationwide competitive examinations and charged with maintaining harmony in the emperor's vast realms. Confucius's answer to the chaos of his era was the way of the just and harmonious society, which, he taught, had once been realized before, in a distant Chinese golden age. Mankind's central spiritual task was to recreate this proper order already on the verge of being lost. Spiritual fulfillment was a task not so much of revelation or liberation but patient recovery of forgotten principles of self-restraint. The goal was rectification, not progress. Learning was the key to advancement in a Confucian society. Thus Confucius taught that love of kindness, without a love to learn, finds itself obscured by foolishness. Love of knowledge, without a love to learn, finds itself obscured by loose speculation. Love of honesty, without a love to learn, finds itself obscured by harmful candor. Love of straightforwardness, without a love to learn, finds itself obscured by misdirected judgment. Love of daring, without a love to learn, finds itself obscured by insubordination. And love for strength of character, without a love to learn, finds itself obscured by intractability. Confucius preached a hierarchical social creed. The fundamental duty was to know thy place. To its adherents the Confucian order offered the inspiration of service in pursuit of a greater harmony. Unlike the prophets of monotheistic religions, Confucius preached no teleology of history pointing mankind to personal redemption. His philosophy sought the redemption of the state through righteous individual behavior. Oriented toward this world, his thinking affirmed a code of social conduct, not a roadmap to the afterlife. At the pinnacle of the Chinese order stood the emperor, a figure with no parallels in the Western experience. He combined the spiritual as well as the secular claims of the social order. The Chinese emperor was both a political ruler and a metaphysical concept. In his political role, the emperor was conceived as mankind's supreme sovereign, the emperor of humanity, standing atop a world political hierarchy that mirrored China's hierarchical Confucian social structure. Chinese protocol insisted on recognizing his overlordship via the kowtow, the act of complete prostration, with the forehead touching the ground 3 times on each prostration. The emperor's second, metaphysical, role was his status as the son of heaven, the symbolic intermediary between heaven, earth, and humanity. This role also implied moral obligation on the emperor's part. Through humane conduct, performance of correct rituals, and occasional stern punishments, the emperor was perceived as the linchpin of the great harmony of all things great and small. If the emperor strayed from the path of virtue, all under heaven would fall into chaos. Even natural catastrophes might signify that disharmony had beset the universe. The existing dynasty would be seen to have lost the mandate of heaven by which it possessed the right to govern, rebellions would break out, and a new dynasty would restore the great harmony of the universe.